You're listening to Potty Mouth Radio, the home of movies, music, television, and comedy. Ho, ho, ho. The following podcast contains spoilers and is very f***ing jolly. We watch a thing. We watch a thing. Ho, ho, Merry Christmas, you bastards, and welcome to We Watched a Thing with Billy and Dave. How you doing, mate?
I'm fine.
That's pretty good Billy voice. Pretty good Billy voice. It is, of course, our annual Christmas episode, and it was Dave's first pick. In the past, we've done It's a Wonderful Life, both Die Hard's reindeer games when I got to pick one, which was fantastic.
There's only two.
Both of the Christmas ones. But it was, Dave's been with the show now for 2 years and has not picked a Christmas film yet. So, Dave, do you want to tell the people what we watched this year?
The most festive and joyous of all films, 1974's Black Christmas.
That's right, which is a Canadian slasher film produced and directed by Bob Clark, who, funnily enough, is also the director of A Christmas Story, one of the most famous Christmas films of all time. Written by Roy Moore, it stars Olivia Hussey, Keir Dullea, Margot Kidder, and John Saxon. And what is it about, Dave?
It is about a sorority gearing up for the Christmas break, and the girls within, as they start to receive ominous, creepy phone calls, and people start dying.
Yeah,
because it's Christmas.
You and I had a very small debate about this last week when we were talking with Sam, and I said that I would say this is probably the first slasher movie.
Yep.
I don't think there's any denying that this is, okay, whether it's the first or not, because, a lot of lay people out there...
There's no Halloween.
Well, I was just going to say, a lot of lay people point to Halloween as one of the first slashers.
No.
This movie very, very clearly inspired that. You've got, even the opening scenes with the point of view of the killer looking around the house. This invented so many of those.
Film through Halloween, things like When a Stranger Calls, the whole, the call is coming from inside, all of that shit.
Oh man, yeah.
That was, Fred Walton's When a Stranger Calls, that was a few years after this. So
yes. It was funny because I watched this with Noose, who usually does not like horror movies, but she actually really enjoyed this one, which I was glad about because I think this movie is an undersung hero. I think that this movie is not really widely seen or remembered enough given its place in cinema history, and it was so great when we got to a certain point in the movie, and before it happened, Noose turned to me and said, "Oh my god, is this the movie? Is this the calls are coming from inside the house?" And I was like, yes it is, and I don't think enough people give it fucking credit for that.
No, because it's a key part of this film.
Yes,
but it's not the own. Whereas obviously, When a Stranger Calls, it's the core kind of thing. It's the big surprise.
Yeah.
In the same way that Halloween has a particular tone, and it's all about Michael Stork. There's elements in this of that.
Yeah.
Anthony Spinelli's Maniac, it's all, its big thing, and what made it so impactful is that point of view with the heavy breathing of the killer and seeing things through their eyes.
Yeah,
that is in here, but it's a small part. This film has so many things that would then go on individually to kind of inspire whole subgenres.
Yeah.
And in Clark's film, they're just part of the fucking recipe.
Yeah,
this film is so important.
I honestly love this film. Look, don't get me wrong, it's not a perfect film. I think some of the acting is very, very bad. I think some of the dialogue is not great.
Not as bad as the acting in Halloween.
Yeah.
Apart from Jamie Lee Curtis, the acting in Halloween is fucking terrible.
Yeah, I guess at least in Halloween you have Jamie Lee Curtis carrying the film. I think in this film I mean, I don't think Olivia Hussey really carries this film in the same way that Jamie Lee Curtis does
I'm so
Halloween.
fond of her though from Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, dude, she was 13. You can't say that anymore.
I don't mean fond like, I mean fond as in that is by far the best version of Romeo and Juliet ever
Yeah.
produced. Look, I think she is solid. I think Margot Kidder is fucking great.
I mean,
she is having a ball with that role.
It's not her best role. I'll say that. Like, she's a lot better in the Amityville Horror. Obviously,
this is a better film than Amityville.
It's a better film, but I think her performance in that film is better.
Well, she's a bigger. I mean, she's very much a drunken, half asleep side character.
I mean, that's the other thing that I would say this film invented is the kind of comic relief side characters that are now very prominent with horrors. Like, you think of Randy from Scream, for example.
Yeah,
this movie, like, Margot Kidder did not need to be an obnoxious drunk, but they do that because it's fun. The sorority mother, my God, when she pulls that bottle of brandy out of the toilet cistern.
And out of the Bible, and out of she has so many fucking bottles in.
Yeah. But I tell you what, there is no better shot in cinema history than when that sorority mother is up in the attic, she spies the dead body, and that slow turn of her head around to where the killer is, her eyes look out to the side, and it's like in slow motion. She turns with her whole face. It takes about 15 seconds. She could have escaped, but instead she's doing this wide-eye turn around to where the killer's... It's the best. I love it so much.
I think that in general, the camera work in this film is outstandingly.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yes,
leaving aside how original it is and how many things it did first, or at least did bigger and better than they'd maybe been hinted at before. I mean, I mentioned when we were chatting last week, but aside from Psycho, which I don't think of as a slasher.
It's not a slasher. It's not a slasher. Yes.
Yeah. But Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, I think, is a kind of a quote unquote proto slasher, which was also 1960, and has. But in that film, you know who the killer is. He's your main character, which was one of the things that's so impactful about it. So it's a different type of film, whereas this, we don't know who the killer is for most of it.
You never know.
But we're still seeing through his eyes.
Yes.
Which is something that I can't think of anything that ever did that before, but certainly a shitload of things have done since.
Yeah. Oh, the cinematography is fantastic. I mean, apart from that point of view stuff, we never find out who the killer is. And the director of the film is credited as Billy. I'm guessing because he's doing a lot of that point of view camera work. It's his hands and stuff.
He's, climbing down the ladder like Santa all through the film.
Yeah. But yeah, the cinematography is fantastic. Early on, when they get the first phone call and all four of the sorority sisters are there, and you just get that really extreme close-up as we pan across their faces, as Billy's on the phone saying all this rather vulgar shit. It's
rather vulgar. This film does not pull... I mean, considering 1974, there are C-bombs galore in that fucking phone call. And I'm not even going to repeat... And you know me, I'm not shy about swearing. Yeah. I'm not going to repeat it because it's... I mean, more than the deaths and the killing and everything else, that first phone call...
Oh, yeah.
That would have stunned people in 74 in theaters.
Well, that's the thing. It was funny when I said to New Sky, I've got to watch this film from memory. It's it's a great slasher film, and she went, a slasher film from 1974. Let me guess, it's full of boobs. And I said, actually, from memory, there's not a single boob in this movie. And
honestly, the director of Porky's.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of weird that there isn't any. But yeah, that phone call is definitely vulgar. But that shot of just panning across their faces, it's cinematography wise, it's a beautiful, and the way that this film utilizes the Christmas setting is really nice because story wise, there's actually not a lot of Christmas there.
It's going to be a very weird pull, but the thing that rewatching it this most recent time the other day, the thing that it brought to mind in the way that the setting pervades everything, but isn't kind of jingle bells, rah rah rah.
Yeah.
Was the holdovers.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah.
The film could not take place at any other time, but the kind of jingle bells Christmassiness of it all is not front and center. It's all in the background, but
it's there all the time.
So
there's decorations in every scene, and it uses the glow of Christmas lights quite effectively, and obviously, like, I think apart from anything else, it's a very wintry film. Like, there's snow everywhere, there's the cold. It's I would agree. Yeah, the holdovers actually is a very good pull to,
and even I mean, and I'm sure it's deliberate because the Christmas setting is so carefully kind of pervades everything, but having Billy coming down from the attic like Santa coming down the chimney over and over again and creeping through the house, it's a very, not as overt as like Silent Night, Deadly Night, but it's you still get a kind of a Santa feel from him.
Yeah. The other thing I think that's really interesting what this film does, in terms of not even necessarily just being the first to do it, but just being a film to do it, grim ending.
Oh.
I love that the film is very ambiguous as to who the killer is, to the point where you don't know who it is. But I love it's one of the first movies I can think of that does the fake out like that.
Poor old Kai DeLeo, who was like, "Oh, I love you" from 2001.
Yeah.
You're a killer. Oh my god.
Yeah, and this film invented so many of those tropes. Even like as soon as the cop car pulls up out front, and the cops are like, "Don't worry, there's a cop out there watching. You'll be safe." You just know at some point someone's going to find that cop dead.
Oh yeah,
and no one's going to know about it. But I love the fact that we don't know who the killer is, but at the very end, when we're panning out of the house, we know the killer's there, and you just hear the phone ringing again. And one of the last things we heard about the killer was that he made a phone call after every murder. And you're like, oh, wow, okay, I guess he killed her.
Who's dead? And I love the fact that Claire, the first victim, body's never found.
Yes.
Still up with the fucking plastic over it,
honestly, these are the worst police in the history of cinema. Like,
but we go back to her, and props to the actress.
Again and again, we go back to her. Yeah,
we go back to her. Doesn't blink once, and that's a rarity when someone has to play dead for so long. But I love the fact that not only do they never find her, but we keep going back to that first victim with the plastic over her face.
Yeah.
And it's one of the final shots of the film is, oh fuck, she's still fucking there.
Yeah, these are honestly the worst police in the world. It's shocking, and I don't actually hate it. I think it's okay, but it is definitely a flaw in the script that they never search the fraternity house at all. They don't go up there. We don't even know that there's a basement in the house until the very end of the film.
We know from Nightmare on Elm Street, John Saxon is not the world's best policeman.
Yeah.
He stuck his head in each room. He had a quick look around. That's kind of enough. I did want to touch on sound design because I think the sound design is amazing. But I'll get kind of nerdy and wankery for a second because when this film came out and sort of kind of thinking again about how, as well as coming before all of the imitators, it's just a cut above in terms of quality. It doesn't have the gratuitous boob shots and things to try and get people in.
Yep.
It's got, it spends more time on the characters and the relationships between them and that than it does on kind of the slasheriness of it.
Yeah.
But what really came through this time around watching it was what a kind of statement it must have been at the time about kind of trying to think of a non-wankery way to say it, but the kind of the burgeoning freedom of women in general in the early 70s.
Oh yeah.
So in this film, you've got scenes where Peter's being a real domineering prick
Yeah.
to Jess about the fact she's pregnant and she's going to have an abortion, and there's a whole scene where he's basically saying you can't do that, and she's and very much it's my body, which in 74 it must have been, you know, quite a statement.
Yeah.
But you've also got Claire's dad coming in and a little bit more comedically, but being shocked by the fact that there were women drinking and smoking and, you know, being sexually active.
The scene of the mother covering the butt on the poster. Yeah.
And I mean, again, you mentioned it before, but I think this film really quite cleverly balances the humor and tension throughout and sort of vacillating between the two. But all through this, there's so many, to the point where it must have been deliberate, statements about these young women are doing their own thing. They're drinking, they're smoking, they're partying, they're all of that, but they're also standing up for themselves and their bodies and all the rest of it. And all of it, with the exception of Claire's boyfriend, who's kind of, you know, apart from that horrendous big fur coat, is kind of cool.
Yeah, he seems like a decent dude, actually.
Almost every other male in this is either incompetent or misogynistic, or, you know, their real arc, you know, Peter's domineering and trying to control Jess's body.
Yep.
Claire's dad is kind of a bit of a buffoon, but very old-fashioned and expects women to be quiet and virginal and etc. And then you've got these women who are cutting loose and being themselves, and you've got this drunken, don't give a fuck dorm mother.
Yeah.
Previous viewings I hadn't picked up on, but it really feels like Clark and I can't remember who's the screenwriter. Was it Moore?
Yeah, Roy. Yeah.
It feels like it's deliberately worked in there at every sort of available opportunity to really sort of push this point, which 74, pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I totally agree. You haven't actually started talking about it yet, but I'm assuming you're going to say that the sound design is tremendous. And I would agree.
Right.
Like, honestly, my biggest shock of rewatching this movie last night, because I have seen it before. It's a great movie, but it has been a while. And my biggest shock was just how well it's made. And like, you know, you said just then that unlike, you know, it's not just that it kind of started so many of these tropes, it's about how much better it does it. But
that's why I've for years I've been sort of banging on and annoying, you know, dear personal friends like Paul Brazulla by saying this is better than Halloween, because I think Halloween absolutely created a lot of things that are now tropes. It did a lot of things first. It's for the budget, the time, all the rest of it. It's an amazing thing. I don't think it holds up in every aspect now. The acting's terrible. Some of the things that were original back then are now kind of hackneyed, which works against the film when you watch it now.
Yeah.
I still think it's a great film.
I think Halloween has a better score. I think that score is incredible. But I think the production of this film, I was taken aback by how good the sound, how good the film, like the production quality is so good.
And I think, I mean, we all think of Clark as kind of the Christmas Story Porky's guy, and everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe he did like Christmas. But he hadn't made Porky's yet. He hadn't made Christmas Story yet. He'd made Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and Death Dream and stuff. You know, it wasn't out of the ballpark for him to be doing this. But I think he shows a lot of skill, and it's surprising that, given how, as you say, how overall well crafted this film is. This is a genuinely well-made film. His career, I mean, I don't know a lot about the guy, but it's not like he went on to be this didn't lead to him doing massive things.
No, but I think that this is what makes this film so good, is it's in a very unique time and space. Because look, I think this is the first slasher. Like, I really do think that in terms of.
I'm not going to argue with you. I do agree.
In terms of what we think of as a slasher now, the tropes and everything associated with the genre.
Yep.
But I think that the reason this film still holds up so well and why the production value in particular is so good is slasher was not yet invented as a genre, and especially as the genre that we now associate with such low-budget indie filmmaking. This film is much closer in a lot of ways to a Hitchcock film than it is to modern-day slashers. Like this you could very easily call a thriller in some ways. Like, it's got so many of the tropes of slashers, but like you say, it's not gratuitous, not only with the nudity, but even with the violence. There's very little blood or anything really in this film.
The score is good. It's not kill, die.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, none of the cheesiness is there that you associate with like a Friday the 13th or something like that.
Yeah, it's much, much closer to a Hitchcock film than it is to modern-day slasher films. But
yeah, I would put this much more closely in sync with things like Psycho and Peeping Tom that we've mentioned, and When a Stranger Calls, than I would with the things that followed it.
yes.
Which it's kind of like Clark was there writing his essay in an exam room, and then you've got all of the, you know, Friday the 13th just cribbing over their shoulder, but only getting every third or fourth word. So you end up with kind of cheap knockoffs.
Yeah. Well, speaking of cheap knockoffs, have you seen any of the remakes of this film?
I think I've seen.
Yeah, I feel like I did see the one with Lacey Chabert.
That's the 2006.
Yes, yeah.
One. Does it have
Michelle Trachtenberg?
Yeah, it's got a fairly big cast.
Yeah.
I may have seen that, but I don't remember. I avoided the 2019 Like the Plague because I heard how fucking atrocious it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one with, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. It's got Carrie Elways, but I don't remember the 2006. So I'm
Me neither.
No,
I'm actually thinking that, I mean, depending how early we finish recording tonight, which I might not have time because we've got a heap of episodes to do. I might rewatch it tonight before News gets home. So yeah.
I was actually, maybe I will as well.
Yeah.
Although I do want to watch Creature Commandos, which is apparently available now, which I didn't realize. But yeah, I mean, I've been banging on for years that this is better than Halloween. I think I agree with you. It's the first slasher, even though, you know, there's elements in things, particularly Peeping Tom, which I think is a masterpiece. But I think this is a fabulous film.
Yeah.
It still holds up.
Same.
Holds up far better than Halloween.
I'm a 9 out of 10. I had so much fun revisiting this film last night. Because you sent through a little bit of a short list when I was like, oh, what Christmas movie should we do? And I was immediately like, oh, fuck yes, Black Christmas. Let's do it. Yeah. So nice. Thank you for pulling this one out. I had a great time with it. Next,
I think I'm an 8. Am I a 9? I'm an 8 or a 9. Fuck, I can't pick. One of those two.
Next week, we are in the new year, my friend, and that means it's time for our big episodes.
Favorite episodes of the year.
Next week, can I say, have we confirmed guests or
we've confirmed guests? I don't know. We've lined up time zones.
And next week, we will be joined by both the legendary Jason from Binge Movies as well as Julio from The Contrarians to count down our worst films of this year.
I hate to correct you, but I think we're joined. I think that's the week after. Didn't we say wasn't it the other way around? Maybe I'm wrong.
Definitely we were going to do worst first and then best.
Okay.
Because I wanted to give us enough time for best for us to see Nosferatu and some of those later things. Yeah.
Quite right.
Yeah. So we'll be counting down the worst films of this year, and I have to be honest, I think it's going to be a great time because I love Jason and Julio, but I don't know how interesting it's going to be because I reckon we're all going to have a lot of crossovers in that list.
I don't know. There's more than 10 that are in contention. There's been some highs. There's been a lot of fucking lows this year.
I mean, I can tell you that certainly Madame Web will not be a crossover with myself because it's not going to be in my list. I fucking love that movie. I have to be honest. I actually think I'm going to have a hard time getting to 10. I don't think I can think of 10. In fact, 10 is going to be 10's going to be too many with 4 of us. We've got to do 5.
That's going to be hard.
Because 10 is going to be 40 films. That'll be like a 3-hour episode.
I've got more than 10 that are 2 or less on Letterboxd, I'm sure.
Right. Well, we'll work out the logistics off mic, but that's what's happening next week, dear listeners. I'm sure that we will put out a post asking for what your worst films of the year are, so definitely go join 100%. The Facebook listener community, and we'll catch you next week.
Fare thee well.